Oh yeah, Sakuya Nade. I'm HK7335 and I'm here to help you create epic Mandalorian cosplay with ease. If you're watching this video, it means you've either printed out the parts for the JDS J-47 or received printed parts from me and you're ready to put it together. For that, I thank you and compliment you on your excellent taste. So let's get to it. First, let's briefly talk about the J-47. It is manufactured by Janssen Defense Systems. It's a multi-role threat neutralization system, and here's a breakdown of some of its more interesting components. First, let's briefly talk about the hardware you'll need and the hardware you might want to use depending on your use case. Whether you're building this as a basic no-frills prop with no lights and sound, or you're all set to literally add bells and whistles, here's what I recommend that you use to get it done. First of all, the armature. That's this piece right here. The barrel and the front and back receiver parts have at their core an armature that should be a ½ inch in outside diameter, or 12.7 millimeters to 13 millimeters max. That tube is usually available in aluminum, and they're also available in steel in 3-foot links. Then there are the screws. I recommend sticking with M3 sizing, but instead of the machine screws that I normally use with threaded inserts, this time I'm suggesting that you go with M3 self-tapping screws like these right here. I have a link for these in my Amazon store, but there are many styles of screw that you can use based on whatever final look you're going for. The nice thing about these screws is that they are similar to wood screws, and they should hold the plastic parts together very well and be less likely to strip out. The key thing to remember when installing these screws, or even machine screws with threaded inserts into 3D prints, is that this is plastic. Don't over tighten the screw or you'll strip out the hole. Plastic is not the same as wood or metal, so keep that in mind when installing. Whatever you choose, you will need an assortment of links from 8mm to 16mm. Adhesives. This is at your discretion, but honestly, a good epoxy or good super glue, preferably medium viscosity, are going to win the day. You can go with Gorilla Glue or E6000, but while those glues will work in the short term, they really aren't ideal in my opinion for this application. But if that's what you got, it will work. Okay. Let's put the J-47 together. Starting with the trigger assembly, we're going to put the trigger in place, down through the top, and then attach the assembly to the right rear receiver, as shown here. I would go with an M3 machine screw for this. 12mm should do, and you're going to put it in this hole right here. So this is going to give you your pivot for the trigger, okay? It's going to go through this side of the receiver and come through the other side. Here in this view we have this attached. If I hide that right now, you can see what we've got going on. So ultimately this screw is going to come through the other side and go into the other half of the receiver here, but that's where you want to start it. Once the trigger's in place and secured partially with the screw, this would be the time to install the 10mm compression spring. Let's go back into here and let's look inside here. Go ahead and isolate this. So you're going to want to install the 10mm compression spring in here. That's also listed on my Amazon store under tools and hardware. In fact, let's go ahead and pull that up so you can see what it is. That would be these guys right here. And that's going to go right in here over these two circular areas. Spring just goes right in here. This is the same spring that is used in my LL99C blaster pistol, so if you built one of those, you probably have a few of them laying around already. So just install the spring on these two nubs, one on the trigger and one on the front wall of the trigger well, and you're good to go. Next, let's go ahead and lay in the armature. Like so. I don't think there's any need to glue this in, but it might not be a bad idea to maybe drill a couple of holes into the armature here and put some small screws in to hold it in place. You could also just hot glue it. That's certainly an option. Next, you're going to want to add the 2 registration pins shown here, and then mate the left side of the receiver with the right side. Let's go ahead and bring that back. Be this right here. And you're going to screw this together. These two pieces are secured by a total of 6 screws, which go down in here. We've got one here, one here, one here, and then there are 2 more up here, and also there's one back here. So let's see, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so there's your 6 screws on the bottom, and then 2 more on the top, but those won't get installed until we put the mount in. You're going to use one screw and go in from one side. You can go in from the right or the left, it really doesn't matter. The holes are countersunk. The only thing here is that this hole is countersunk and the safety button is hollowed out in the back so that it will fit over the screw head. And for this screw here, this is going to go through. You're going to probably want to hold off on this one until it's time to install this part, because you're going to install a screw here and it's going to go through into this guy over here from the back. So like I said, there's 2 screws that are going to go in here that are part of the scope mount, but that part's coming up. First, we need to install the left and right halves of the front receiver. And we got 3 registration pins that are going to go in first, like so, right up in here. And then you just bring the 2 halves together, making sure the armature sits in its channel. So you'll probably want to put one side on first, get it in position, then bring the other side in. Of course, you want to have the registration pins already in place so that everything lines up and locks together properly. And go ahead and install your 2 screws down here. And again, these are going to be pretty much the same screws probably that you used for here. They may be a little bit longer. They may not be, but they need to go from one side into the other. Doesn't matter which side you go from, you're only going to screw in from one side because you really don't have any way to put a screw in here and a screw in here because it won't work. Okay, so the receiver assembly is fully secured when the scope mount is attached with 6 screws. Okay, so let's have a look at that. The scope mount goes right down on top of this as seen in the video here, and we have 6 holes total. Got 2 in the front, 2 in the mid part, and 2 in the back. And you can see there's corresponding holes that go along with these. Okay. So yeah, there we go. That's what I wanted to show you. So the screws will go in here, and that will effectively lock everything together on the receiver. So you'll have screws down here and screws up at the top, and that should be pretty solid. Okay, so now's a good time to add the hammer and the hammer block, which go right here in the back. That's these parts right here. This basically can be hot glued in place. It does not have any kind of stress forces working on it. This is not a mechanical part. This doesn't move. It's designed to just be screwed or glued in place. It is possible, if you want to secure this with a screw, if we go back a little bit and bring this in first, let's just hide this. It would be possible to put a screw right here and also another one right up here, kind of out of the way of the hammer. You can also just hot glue everything, and I think it would be fine. I would not recommend using a more permanent type adhesive, because if you do decide to put lights or soundboards or anything like that in here, or the spring breaks on the trigger and you need to put a new one in, or the trigger breaks and you need to put a new one in, you're going to want to be able to get this apart. So using a more permanent adhesive like super glue or epoxy is going to make it difficult to take this part off, and you're going to have to probably break it to remove it and then print a new one. So I would just hot glue it. I think it will be just fine. Hot glue holds actually quite well under most cases. It's just not super strong for shear forces and, you know, heavy pulling forces, none of which are going to be experienced by these parts here. If we bring, put the hammer in, that can be glued in. There's opportunities for a screw here and also for right here. So if you want to just screw this in with one of these smaller M3 screws, that would be totally fine. Okay, now we're ready to assemble the barrel. Starting with the carbine emitter, mid-coupler, slide each part onto the barrel in the order shown. So let's go ahead and just watch this so we can see how this works. It's pretty straightforward. let's talk about this part. There are several things I want to mention. First, I would recommend either hot gluing each barrel part on, or you could also drill some very small holes in the parts themselves and put in some set screws. So there are places where you could do that that aren't going to be obtrusive. You could put a couple right in here, and if you put them in, in a good place, they would end up looking like a detail. So that's something to keep in mind. The armature is going to hold really well once it's secured in here, and if you have it either set screwed in or hot glued in, this is going to be pretty solid. The combination of the screws and the hot glue are going to make this a pretty durable configuration. The other thing is, there are a couple of variations that immediately come to mind. Here we go, here's our first one. Okay, so this is the carbine version 1. This is a short barrel version of what we're building. Here's carbine version 2. And so you can see the difference here is that we've basically left some parts out and changed the position of some of these parts to create a totally different look. Additionally, you could also leave the barrel off completely and just have a short little muzzle and make a pistol. So those are some additional things that you could do. Okay, with that out of the way, let's continue. The lower support here is attached with 2 screws. Again, I'd go with the self-tapping M3 screws. 12 millimeters should work here. Let's back this up because we're getting ahead of ourselves. Go ahead and run that through again. Now for the grips. For some reason, the hole that should be in the frame, and I'll show you that here, isn't there. At any rate, you can use this hole here as a guide for your drill to put a hole in here. So just basically lay one of these scales up against the frame in the correct position and run your drill through here and you're good to go. Since you're drilling a hole that's going to go through here to the other side and then screw into this scale, it's probably okay if you go with a drill that's the same size as the screw, or even maybe a little bigger. Because what I'm going to recommend here is that you glue one scale on, and I would do this one because you can see this one doesn't have a screw hole on this side. So glue this scale in place, and it does have a hole for the screw to go into. So you could just use one screw to screw all the way through into this grip and keep this grip in place. So after that, you'll be putting on these parts here, which is the stock pivot. There's a left and a right, and one side is meant to have a screw going through it, and the other side has no hole all the way through. It only has a hole on the back to receive the screw, and that's going to go right through here. Then you've got the safety button, which is just a cosmetic piece. It's got one per side. Then of course there's this little optional emblem that's got my logo on it. You can use that if you want, or you can use it as a sizing reference for something else that you might want to put in yourself. And that's just designed to cover up the screw and give you some visual interest. I would hot glue that on. That's going to be something you'll want to be able to take off later. Alright, so now for the stock. Very simple, very straightforward. The stock is in 2 pieces. You're going to glue those together, and you're going to be left with a cavity that's more than big enough for a soundboard or batteries, especially lithium type batteries or 9-volt batteries. You might even be able to get a 4-pack AA battery holder. I don't know why you'd need something that big, but you never know. Then the butt plate acts as a cap for the whole thing. Bring that in so we can get a good look at the inside of the stock here. And we're going to switch to this view real quick. So when we bring them together, you can very clearly see how much space is in there. Get around here to the front. There we go. That's going to be better. So you can see there's a lot of room there. Quite spacious. If you want to run wires through here, you will need to use your Dremel tool or something to create a channel to run some wires through. I have no idea how people want to modify these things, so I did not think of everything. You will have to do some modifications yourself. But hopefully I got you most of the way. Here's the butt plate. It just screws right on. Again, I would use the self-tapping M3 screws. A pan head style screw that fits into a countersink would work really good here. Okay, let's go ahead and attach the scope. The scope consists of the scope, the 2 clips that hold it in, and 2 adjustment knobs, which of course are just cosmetic. You're going to want to use, I actually used machine screws to put this together, and it worked really good. I used 10 millimeters up here for these, and I used 12s for these to screw down into this. And that's going to go basically like that. And you put your 12 millimeters in here, your 10 millimeters up here, and you're good to go. I would use these hex style, I think they're called hex socket heads. Let's see, yeah, hex socket. I would use these hex socket screws on the scope because they will look very cool and have a nice sci-fi look to them. Alright, lastly are the additional side panels and details. These are completely optional. They're just meant to be glued on and with an adhesive of your choice, and it's very simple and straightforward. So let's have some final thoughts about this. I would do a pre-paint assembly first to make sure everything is fitting correctly. Then disassemble, paint, reassemble, and then weather it. Above all, have fun. As mentioned previously, there are several variations of this weapon system that can be built. I'm going to build them all and carry 2 of them as part of my next kit, a complete gunny build. And as always, if you run into any difficulty or challenges with this model, whether in printing or assembling, don't hesitate to contact me. While I'm doing many things during the day, I do check my messages at least once a day, and I will respond to you. Well, thank you again for purchasing this STL file, and good luck with your build of the Janssen Defense Systems J-47 Threat Neutralization System, also known as HK's Blaster Rifle. Until next time, this is HK7335 signing off. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Ori Vere. Oh yeah!